Well, good afternoon and welcome. I'm Gonul. I'm the founding director of MEI Center for Turkish Studies, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to today's event. Today's webinar is the second event in the MEI Turkish Studies program's Voices from Turkish Politics series, a series that we launched for prominent figures in Turkish politics recently. And today I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Temel Karamollaoğlu. He has worked as a senior executive in both the private and public sectors before entering politics. And throughout his political career, he has participated in the executive branches of the National Salvation Party, the Welfare Party, the Virtue Party, and the Felicity Party. From 1989 to 1995, he served as mayor of the city of Sivas, and in 2016, he was elected as chair of the Felicity Party and continues to hold that position today. I look forward to taking all these questions through Zoom's Q&A feature, which you can all find on your screens. And for those calling in by phone or watching our panel on the live stream, you can ask a question by emailing events.mei.edu. And also feel free to ask a question at any time throughout the panel. I will be looking at all of your questions and will factor as many as possible into the discussion. Mr. Karamollaoglu, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you're quite busy and you have taken time out of your busy schedule to talk to us. So thank you so much for joining.
Well, I thank you very much for accepting me. But I would like from the beginning to make a comment that, of course, my English is diminishing in time. So if I falter, I hope you will look at it as in a different way. You will excuse me if I sometimes make my usage of words or expressions something different than I mean, and I will try, and I hope that to put it in the right direction eventually. Yes.
Well, thank you for that note. I'm sure you'll do very well. So today's webinar is mostly intended for a Western audience that might not be too familiar with you or your party. So I would like to start with a basic question. Are you an Islamist?
This word, when I was chosen or appointed as the president of this party, immediately the same question came from the public and from the especially journalists, and I said that I am not an Islamist because this term is not used among ourselves till the middle of last century. Later on, it was introduced by the Western media and not in a good manner. Generally, when you call someone Islamist, it has something to do with terrorism as well. So I am not an Islamist, but I am a Muslim. And I believe in Islam. And of course, my belief affects and influences my attitude and my policy, which is natural.
So how do you define your party then? Is it a conservative democratic party?
Well, you can say yes, conservative or democratic, but the point is that these words doesn't mean much in these days, because a leftist, if they have been leftist in the past, they are very conservative in that respect. It doesn't mean that they have a different approach to the problems of the world. So what we call ourselves, our notion as believers, I'm sure you have heard this notion, which means that we have ideas which have been carried forward up to now by our nation. And in this respect, we are, as I said, give a lot of importance to justice in a country. We should not define this simply in a different way. Social justice shows the appropriate distribution of wealth in the country, truthfulness, being very transparent in the government affairs. I mean, whatever the Western countries these days accept as their basic notion, we almost 90% agree with all of them.
So you are critical of the way the term Islamism is being used these days, but you don't reject the because
yes.
you were referring to Milli Görüş, which is national view movement that created your predecessor's party, Necmettin Erbakan's party, and he is known to be the leader of Turkish political Islam, and you are the continuation of that party, aren't you?
Well, when you say the leader of the political Islam, it is defined by the Westerners in that way. Of course, our belief, not just our belief, the belief of every person, especially every politician, plays a role in their attitude towards different problems that meet in future in politics. So to call it in the negative sense, generally this is used as a negative approach. When you say Islamist, they have something very different than the Muslims all over the world cherish. No, we are saying that this is not right. Some people may make use of Islam to develop or improve their political approach in a country. I think this is extremely wrong, because to make use of your religion for something like politics, to get credit, to gain credit in the public, I think this is extremely wrong. This is why we say definitely we are not Islamists, but we believe in Islam, and of course we cherish Islamic values, which, as I said, when I think later on, most probably it will come as a question, what is our basic notions, and I will try to explain the notions that we actually believe.
Well, I understand what you're saying. You're uncomfortable with the gap between the Islamism that was created as a term, and maybe in an ideal world, in your ideal world, the way you define it is different. But today there is a negative connotation around that word, and you're uncomfortable with that. That's understandable. But that's still, I mean, again, I still can't wrap my head around the fact that as a person who has come from the national view movement, you are saying that you don't define yourself as an Islamist. So I'm going to stick to that point and ask another question. There is, for instance, there is much debate, particularly in Western capitals, on Turkey when they refer to Erdogan and his policies. Usually he's being defined as an Islamist. And he's being defined as an Islamist by his opponents in Turkey as well. So what do you say to that? I know you wanna avoid using the term Islamism, but we have to talk about Islamism. And in your world, do you think Erdogan is an Islamist, or who is an Islamist, or what does Islamism mean in your ideal world, aside from how it is being used or misused in the Western world?
I think in the Western world, definitely, basically, Islam is misunderstood. And a lot of connotations are put on Islam, which has nothing to do with Islam. First of all, before anything else, we believe, and this is our religion, dictates us that there is no compulsion in religion. If you look at history all over the world, where Muslims in one time were the powerful group who were ruling those countries, when they left, what was left behind? I mean, look at Spain. Is the biggest example there. When the Muslims were in Spain, everybody lived according to their own belief. In fact, we can say that the Renaissance started from Spain. Basically, those people who were educated in Spain, but later on, when the Spaniards, they became powerful, they gained strength, they did not leave behind a single Muslim or a single Jew in Spain. This is, I think, a good example of what our basic attitude as a Muslim and what the Westerners see us. There is a big difference here. So when it comes to Tayyip Erdogan, when he was leaving Milli Görüş, which we define as Milli Görüş, he said that first, I have, you know, that I have taken the shirt of Milli Görüş. Now, from now on, I am going to struggle to be a part of European Union. This is our ideal. And since then, he has never mentioned Islamic international organizations, never. He has been the leading figure now and then. He was the chairman of the D8 or Islamic Unity Conference or Economic Unity organizations in Central Asia, including Central Asia. He has never made any attempt to improve the relationship among those countries who were members of those organizations. So you should, I think, ask him whether he is an Islamist or not. I should not make a comment on that respect.
Well, if I ever host Erdogan, I will definitely ask him that question. But for now, again, the fact that you say you're not an Islamist party is news to me as someone who has been following Turkish politics for some time. So that's why I really wanna make sure that I understand this correctly. So let me refer back. Let me ask you in a different way. Do you think what happened in Iran in 1979? I'm not talking about Iran today. I'm talking about the Iranian revolution that happened in 1979. Was that an Islamist movement? And what was your reaction to that as a young man, probably?
Well, I would like you to make a comparison between the regime of Shah and the regime of Khomeini, who brought this present condition. I mean, definitely the regime that was applied by the Shah was more oppressive. People did not have the freedom of thought, freedom of belief, freedom of whatever you can say, press. But now that at least there is that type of freedom. Some people may agree with the policies of Iran and some may not. But when I make a comparison, they have certain mistakes. They have not solved the problems of Iran altogether. This is a mistake, but this has nothing to do with their belief or understanding, I think. They have not been able to be successful, for example, in economic activities. In foreign relations, they tried to gain ground, but they have not been very successful, but they are trying to be a part of Europe, the world. They never disregard the non-Muslim countries that they should not have any relationship with them. So when you look at from that angle, they are more successful than Shah, from my point of view, the way I analyze what has happened.
So I understand you are saying that the Iranian regime might have made mistakes, but what I'm trying to get at is the question that whether the 1979 Iran-style Islamic governance, is that something that you have promoted in your career?
No, we have different approaches. I mean, there are some basic differences as well, as you know, between Shia and Sunni Islam.
Aside from
These
that,
differences, yeah, these are differences. Certain approaches could be different, but I would not like to make proper comment on the policies of those governments. But as I said, Iran had made a decision. They have been partially successful and partially they have not been very successful. But the attitude of the some Western countries, especially the United States, I think I would, how can I say, the Europeans have a very different idea than the United States towards Iran. So I would, for example, not like really to support the attitude of the United States because they do not want to give Iran any chance of making progress in different fields. I mean, for example, I believe that when they said in nuclear field, they do not believe in making a nuclear bomb. I think they believe in this, and they are sincere in their belief. But the United States says, no, I do not accept this. They could make very easily a nuclear bomb. Well, a nuclear bomb is a danger for the country as well. If you cannot deliver it to the other side, it will explode in your own hand, in your country. So this is my understanding, right?
We'll get to your views on foreign policy, but before that, one last question on this topic, which is, so in your world, in your views, what is the ideal relationship between politics and religion? In other words, should religion guide government policies, and if so, in what form?
You know, this is a question that is created, unfortunately, by the Western countries, because their approach to religion is very different. They have been always very dogmatic. And unfortunately, Christianity and Judaism as well, they have very dogmatic beliefs. But in our belief in Islam, the influence of Islamic ideology to the politics, day-to-day policies, which is applied in the countries, are the policies that are accepted by the Western countries as a matter of rule. As I said, the basic rule is the justice, basic. Because in our belief, it is said, declared that haq, that means justice, is the foundation of the state. Freedom of belief, freedom of speech, freedom of life is again accepted as the basis of a country. The people who have different beliefs in a country, they can live according to their own ideas and to their own belief. For example, the attitude towards the public, that you should have really a fair distribution of wealth in a country. Some people being very rich, extremely rich, and the others are exploited. I think this is extremely wrong. And all these ideals and good ethics, moral values, being transparent in the government, these are all values that now have been accepted by the Western democracies. I am not saying that they are applied, but they are accepted, because there are double standards later on, I may mention when the time comes perhaps. This is dictated by our own religion as well. Just because our religion says this, dictates these understandings to us, well, we have nothing to do with Islam. No, understanding of Islam is different, as I said. understanding of religion is different in our countries and in the West. This is always misunderstood. Very minor issues made a very big issue. For example, now this is always jihadist. In Islam, there is no word of jihadists. These are all created by the Western countries and in a negative sense. A Muslim cannot go and kill any person, neither Muslim nor Christian nor any other religion. They can't. A court decision is necessary to be able to punish a person, not just the life imprisonment or causing death sentence, passing a death sentence on an individual. This is the understanding. In fact, what is now called jihadist in the West, in fact, a notion just after the passing away of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was accepted. Some of the Muslims of that time, they were very harsh. Every word in the Quran was translated and understood in a special way, and they thought that they have the right to kill any person that they may meet who do not agree with them on that specific issue. This we lived through in the past as well, but Muslims in general never accepted such extreme views in the governance of any country. So it is natural for us to be influenced by these values, which we believe that emanates from our belief from Islam.
So Islam, in your view, only provide a code of ethics for the rulers and nothing else. It shouldn't be codified in law. It shouldn't guide legal code. It shouldn't guide family law. Is that what you're saying?
No. These can be, but these are all specific to those people who accept Islam. If they do not, they can have their own way of life, and the other side, they have their own way of life. I mean, I am not saying that this should be altogether excluded from our way of life. I mean, capital punishment was applied very rarely within this last 600, nearly 400 years, 1400 years, since the establishment of Islam in the world. And some of the punishments were very specific, and it was not applied throughout the ages. This should be known. Yes.
Well, next question. The AKP and Erdogan have been in power for almost 2 decades now. And when he came to power, he promised to battle 3 things. He promised to battle poverty, he promised to battle corruption and repression. Yet Turkey has a poverty rate of 28.5%, which is higher than any other country in the OECD. Unemployment rate stands at 14%. Corruption has never been this widespread in the history of the Republic. The AKP government has become the most authoritarian government in Turkish history. So there's a debate. I know you don't want to talk about this whole the branding of Islamism, but in my opinion, Erdogan, as a leader who played a prominent role in the country's Islamist circles for 4 decades, has dealt a much bigger blow to the brand of Islamism than Kemalists could ever dream of. Would you agree with that statement, Erdogan?
Erdogan, I think, if he really gave emphasis to Islamic belief and understanding, he should first, the rule of law prominent issue, the most important issue in the country, as you have said. He has no care about it. The distribution of wealth, there is no attention paid to this fact. As you said, unemployment is at present 14%. But actually, those experts, they go up to 24%. Some of them go up to over 30% of unemployment. And our foreign debt is gone up to over $430 billion. Mm-hmm. There is always deficit in the budget, in the government. Internal debts is gone at least twice the national income, more than twice. When you have the government, the state, the enterprises, and the individuals. These are the issues that, unfortunately, Erdogan has not been successful. The investments in Turkey basically were made in the infrastructure, roads, railways, bridges, tunnels, airports. I mean, these are necessary for a country, but the investment should go head-to-head with the investment into production, in industry, in agriculture. If you neglect that, what will come out is the conditions that we are living in now, unfortunately. He has not been successful. And we cannot put the blame on the Islamic understanding or Islamic belief. This is his understanding. If he thinks that this is Islamic, that means he doesn't have any idea of Islam, what Islam is. When we are talking today, in this day and age, we believe that, as I said just before, justice is the priority. If there is no justice in a country, there is no Islamic understanding. I mean, the ruler or the leader or the president, the king, caliph, whoever he is, he may pray not 5 times a day, 15 times a day, but his policies will not be Islamic. Mm-hmm. Prayer does not grant, or how can I say, give protection to his wrong policies. Because of this, as I said, it is the approach in general to the governance, understanding of governance in Turkey or in any Islamic country, any Muslim country, unfortunately, is misleading. And I accept, I mean, some of the Westerners, perhaps you yourself may say that, I mean, if Islam is such a high value, indoctrinates on the Muslims, why the Muslims are leaving their own countries and going to the West? Well, because in the West, these points are, even if it is not perfect, accepted as the rule of law. I mean, justice is, you can, if you face a wrongdoing, either from the government or from an individual, when you go to a court, generally, you will get the right result, and they will protect your rights. This is a fact. But this does not make Islam the guilty parts. It is the individuals who are not applying the basic rules.
So you're
this is why I said. This is why I said justice, freedom of belief, freedom of speech, freedom of enterprise. At the same time, in any kind of freedom of, especially press, extremely important, and the government should not intervene in the justice system. Because once you intervene, then there is no justice there. You may have a very developed structure of justice, how can I say, system, but if there is the interference from the government, then that system does not provide justice.
So you are, if I understand you correctly, you're saying that in fact everything that humanity needs, like the rule of law, media freedom, all these things that are necessary for a functioning democratic society, actually you could find those values in Islam. And the reason why Erdogan hasn't addressed the country's problems is because he failed to implement Islamic policies. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I mean, if he is really defines himself as Islamist, then he should apply these rules in the country, in his government. His attitude, his actions should be questionable. He should be very transparent in his governance when he makes a decision. Unfortunately, we don't see this. And that is why in the world generally, Turkey now is downgraded in these respects, unfortunately.
So is there an example, an ideal example that you could give us where an Islamist movement, a true Islamist movement is doing exactly what you're saying and
Unfortunately, I cannot. Unfortunately, I cannot.
Okay, well.
Give an example in that respect, unfortunately.
Okay, well, next question. So what is, in your opinion, the most urgent problem of the country? I mean, what would be the first thing you would fix or change were you to become president tomorrow?
Well, in fact, the basic thing is unfortunately, causing disruption in the public. They are, by the years past, they become very controversial with each other. They start accusing everybody else who do not have the same ideas in the policies that should be applied. This causes a basic problem. That's why we should, as politicians, change our attitude, change our approach to the problems. We should be able to speak, but at the same time to listen to the people who do not agree with us, who may have different ideas. This will help to solve the problems of the country. And then, of course, comes, secondly, is the justice. System doesn't matter. This is an understanding. There should be, the justice should be upheld in a country if you want peace in that country. There should be, as I said, transparency. The governments should be accountable openly to the public. Every action they take, every decision they make should be investigated, especially if economic activities are there, are issues, then there should be proper investigation whether justice is applied there or it isn't just justice. There is a proper conduct of matters when you are making any kind of political investments. The public should know where that money is spent, lira by lira in Turkish lira, cent by cent. These are the most important issues. As I said, afterwards, though, immediately, Turkey should change our policy of investment. We should stop spending money on infrastructure or on buildings. We should allocate all our resources to agriculture and industry. Otherwise, we will not be able to solve our problem. I mean, the unemployment will be solved with such a policy. The foreign debt only can be paid if we can improve our exports or diminish our imports, then we'll be able to pay our own foreign debts. And the wages of the workers, especially the low-level workers who are getting very low income getting, well, I think they should increase at least, from my point of view, twice or 3 times. Of course, it will not happen in one night, but through certain 10 years, within 10 years, this can happen easily. So the investment policy is extremely important. And of course, the foreign policy as well. Turkey managed to alienate almost all the countries. I mean, this is, whether it can be considered as a success or not, but this shows that in the foreign policy, they have not been successful.
Well, we'll get to foreign policy, and I have to say, as the daughter of a farmer myself, I couldn't agree with you more on the need to invest more in agriculture. And now I want to ask a question about, in my opinion, another very pressing issue, which is in 2020, 205 women in Turkey have been killed. In 2019, 417 women died in domestic violence cases, according to activist reports. In 2011, Turkey signed a European treaty, which is commonly known as Istanbul Convention, to prevent gender-based violence. Now, Erdogan wants to withdraw from the treaty, and your party supports that. So my question is, why are you opposed to a convention that prevents women from getting killed?
Well, I think the Istanbul Convention, it has the name that to prevent cruelty against women. As you have said, Turkey signed this agreement, made change in certain laws, but was not successful in preventing terror against women.
But it wasn't implemented properly.
This is not just in Turkey, in the world in general as well. Those who have signed the Istanbul Agreement and who did not. I mean, it doesn't come into issue, but in the United States, especially oppression of the women in certain cases is more harmful than in Turkey. The figures, certain figures, of course, in the United States, men get sometimes punished as well if the woman is a bit, it seems, is stronger than the man. But in 2 points, we think we give a lot of importance to 2 points. One is the prevention of cruelty against women. We should approach the problem in a wider area, not just punishing the person who is being cruel to his wife or to women. There should be steps taken in education, in training, in social behavior. I mean, this needs a whole range of issues to be taken into consideration. So we think that this should be taken from scratch. Again, why we have not been successful in preventing cruelty against women, then we should approach this point in a wider sense. Socially, as I said, psychologically, in educational fields, on television, certain programs perhaps, or in communities, this should be taken into consideration. But at the same time, there is another, from our point of view, important issue, that is the protection of the family. Now, when it comes to family, there are a lot of definitions. I do not agree that family is established between a man and a woman. You can say that two men come together and they can have a family. No, that is not a family. They can be, they are coming, deciding to live together, that's all. Or two women. It is not a family. You cannot consider it. Family is the basic kernel of the society. The population increases by the family.
But what role? I understand you have a distinct definition of family, and I understand that. But my question is, what role do women play in your definition of family?
Oh, in my definition of family, of course, I mean, some of the points that I will be putting forward could be considered very idealistic. But in our belief, man is a part of the family, but the most important person in the family is the woman. In our belief, paradise lies underneath the feet of the women, not of man.
Well, that's a very sweet thing to say, but when it comes to...
I know, as I said, you will say this, but this is a fact. If there are discrepancies, then we should take those points into consideration and try to solve. I mean, the other day I was talking, and there was a group who visited me. The leader of the group was a Catholic. And I said that in our understanding of family, family is not established in the understanding of Catholicism. No. If the family, the couple are not able to carry it further, then there should be separation. They can separate. This is a rule in our belief. You cannot force them to live together if they cannot live together. So we have to find a way of solving the problems that arise between men and women. But the value of women never is less than the man. This is our basic understanding. The values are different. I mean, the attributes are different. I mean, they are now trying to do something which is very abnormal to my point. I mean, a woman bears the child. A mother bears the child. In an artificial way, you can plant something in the man and then he can have perhaps a child as well, but I cannot call him mother. That is different. That is a different understanding. It is a mechanism which is not in the nature. We have to respect to the nature as well, to a certain degree. Some people get very aggravated when we talk about the nature. So don't talk to me about nature. Why? Nature is a fact, a living fact. Nature means that we are living through. So that is why we said this was misunderstood. We are not talking from now on about the agreement of Istanbul agreement. We are talking about the oppression of the women, that we should take very proper precautions to prevent this oppression. Secondly, we should encourage the enhancement of the family.
Then you should support the Istanbul Convention. You are criticizing that Istanbul Convention hasn't addressed the problems because it hasn't been implemented.
No.
And also, and you mentioned the childbearing, in your opinion, is a women's primary responsibility. That is problematic. And also, I mean, women's role, I understand. I'm sure you love your wife, you love your daughters. But women's role in social, political, and economic spheres is what is important and being discussed here. And the next, I also want to say, I mean, Istanbul Convention, in my opinion, is about keeping women alive. You talked about, well, we shouldn't just punish and we should do this. I'm all for it. You're right. But Istanbul Convention is about keeping women alive and preventing domestic violence. And there is no clause attacking the family in the Istanbul Convention, and no clause promoting homosexuality. And by the way, and also it could be an effective tool to prevent domestic violence against the LGBT people. So you might not embrace homosexuality, but as citizens of Turkey, it's their constitutional right to be protected against violence, and you cannot deny that right.
Well, this is a matter of different point of view, perhaps. But Istanbul Convention, there are some new, very vague terms. Gender issue, for example. These are all created through the Istanbul Convention. I mean, some people may not mind it, but at the school age, when I send my children or my next of kin to school, I do not want the girls and the boys to use the same toilet. Mm-hmm. But according to this new understanding, they say, well, why not? When I go to a toilet, I mean, excuse me by using these words, but when I go in an airport, I do not want to mix with the ladies, and most of the ladies do not want to mix with me. Mm-hmm. They have a different approach, understanding of privacy. Why should we start from this point? That is why Istanbul Convention introducing new ideas into public life. And later on, this will definitely have a negative effect on the society, and it will create new problems. This is our understanding. You may have different opinion, but this is my opinion.
Thank you. Well, I want to jump to a different topic. Recently, just a few days ago, Turkish authorities issued arrest warrants for 82 people, including current and former officials of the country's pro-Kurdish opposition party, for attending a protest in 2014. So how did you react to that, and what is your party's Kurdish policy?
Well, of course, this was a very unfortunate decision that was taken by the government. The government have not been able to solve when I say the government, of course, Erdogan's way of ruling the country have not been successful in economics, in health service, or in foreign policy. I think he has not been successful. And sooner or later, the ballot box will come in front of the public. And everyone will vote for the next president, or if it changes, for the next government. Now, by bringing into issue, there are certain points that were, in fact, not in the public attention at present. It was not taken. I mean, no one was thinking about Kobani. Suddenly, this was an issue. Now, public are talking about whether it was right, wrong, or some people made certain mistakes. This is just to divert the attention of the public to a different sphere. And I think it has not been successful. It was wrong. The government should not have taken such a decision, especially people who are known as very mild people in the Kurdish issue. They are under custody. I mean, one of the ex-MPs was our candidate in the last election. He was taken, Altantan. He has been against terror from the beginning. He made his views very clear. He is now under arrest. And this cannot be accepted, and we do not agree with the policy of the government in these issues. This was wrong. And this gave to the outside world, again, a wrong present, wrong perspective of the Turkish country now, Turkish president, well, government as well, you can say.
So what is your party's solution to the Kurdish problem?
The Kurdish problem, I mean, first, we should always make it, when we are starting to talk in Turkey, we have to make certain points very clear that we do not agree with the idea that Kurdish problem can be solved through terrorist activities. We are against terror. And these terrorist activities, unfortunately, are supported by the Western countries, by the United States, by Russia. This is wrong. We should be able to solve the problem among ourselves, inside Turkey or inside any other country, but not by force, not by using weapons and killing people. We should be able to talk. How it will be solved? Of course, it is nearly 100 years now this issue has been on the agenda of the Turkish Republic. In the past, it was in a different way, but especially since 1960s, especially from 1980s, it had changed the form. Terror has been the main method of solving the Kurdish problem by certain Kurds. I think the Kurds are ready. I am a Turkish person. We are ready to live with Kurds together. We have been living for centuries. There are a few issues which the Erdogan in the past took certain steps which were positive. For example, now there is a television network which is in Kurdish. This is a good step. But in the local politics, if the people decide to choose a mayor among themselves, if immediately you accuse them of terrorist activities and conspiracies, and then take them off duty, appoint someone from your own point of view, which will serve the public, of course, this will not help to solve the problem. And I am sure in future we believe in this, that this issue can be solved. And we are the most, how can I say, assertive political party. I think we can solve that problem better than or quicker than all the other political parties.
So does that mean that you are ready to address Kurdish demands? Kurds have been complaining about this ethnic definition of Turkishness in the constitution and the vague definition terrorism law, and they have language demands.
Yes.
And they want decentralization. So does that mean, you just said that you would be the ideal party to fix Turkey's Kurdish problem? Does that mean your party would address those demands?
Of course, we should be able to come together and speak. As I said, the first issue was that terror will not solve our problems. Second issue is the unity of the Turkish country. And everybody should have respect to this. That
Unitarian.
Unitarian, yes. We should be able to live together. And if there are certain problems, then we should be able to solve. In fact, you know that Professor Erbakan, because of his approach to this point, he was forbidden from the political activity for a very long time. Just because he said that between Turks and Kurds. In fact, of course, the definition of the Turk, in fact, does not make any reference to a race. In Turkey, it is mentioned very openly and clearly that the people who live in Turkish Republic are Turks who are a member of this republic. Whether they are basically either from Macedonia or Yugoslavia, wherever they may come, or from the eastern part of Turkey, still they are referred to. But when you are referring to them, they in Turkey, as you know, sometimes they say Kürt Hasan, Çerkez Ethem, bilmem falan. This is just a definition to make them, we are not against their basic family ties with the past. That can be used, of course.
But that definition obviously have institutional.
Yes.
But let's go back to, you mentioned Erbakan. Obviously, Erbakan's approach to Kurdish problem was problematic, and that's something that Erdogan has employed in the past, and it failed to solve the problem because Erbakan and Erdogan approached the issue from they stressed the common Muslim identity and disregarded Kurds' ethnic demands, and that's a problem right there.
No, he did not disregard the Kurdish problem.
Ethnic
said,
I mean.
No, yes, from the ethnicity point of view, we never disregarded the Kurdish entity, never. Because of that, Erbakan said that if you say that I am a Turk and I solve my problems on our own ideas, that is why I have a priority over everybody else. A Kurd will say that, well, I am a Kurd, I will solve the problems better than you do. Just because of his words, as I said, just these words, he was forbidden from political activity for a long time. He was punished.
Let's switch to foreign policy. Referring to Turkey's aggressive tactics in the Eastern Mediterranean, you recently criticized Turkey's belligerent foreign policy approach and underlined the need for diplomacy. So what's, in your opinion, the most urgent problem to be fixed on the foreign policy front?
I think in the foreign policy, at present, I think the Erdogan's government do not have any basic principles that they will, if they stick to that, they will be successful. They are floating. For example, in Cyprus, to become a member of European Union, they said northern Turkish Cyprus state should join with the south, and there should be one country in one state in Cyprus. He supported the Annan plan, but the Greeks rejected the Annan plan, and the Turks accepted it. So today there is a northern Turkish Republic, which we thought was wrong, because there are two entities in Cyprus. There should be a northern Turkish Republic, there should be a southern Greek Republic, and there will be no problem. Everybody will live on their own land. Why should be, by force, one state in Cyprus? This is just one of the issues. And in other points, for example, in Libya, they were very dubious. At the beginning, they were not very sure. They were against the approach of NATO and France. Later on now, we come to a different state. We support the government which is accepted by the United Nations as the legitimate governments of Libya. But the Americans, the Russians, the France, they are all against it. Turkey is left in between, in the Aegean Sea. I mean, Greek government is really broken all the rules and laws, agreements that we made with them in the past. They occupied all the islands. Whether they are small or big doesn't make any difference. They cannot declare Aegean Sea as a sea of Greece. No, there are, I mean, it prevents our even ships going from Istanbul to Antalya if they declare something like that. They have not been able to, they were not successful. They should have intervened earlier. They were too late after they established their military bases in these islands. Now there is a difficulty, unfortunately.
So you think Turkey should have sent its navy earlier? Is that what you're proposing as a solution?
Well, they could be, but basically they should have brought this issue immediately. They should have given them a note saying that you cannot occupy those islands on your own without the agreements, disregarding the agreements which was made earlier, starting from Lausanne Agreement. Afterwards, there has been other stages on the small islands which exist in the Aegean Sea.
And if Greece doesn't...
They should have taken at least an initiative at the beginning. Later on, of course, if when it comes that you cannot make them understand your suggestions, then Turkey can use force. I mean, this is a natural thing. If they are breaking the law, international law. But it should not have come to that stage because of the passive attitude of the Turkish foreign policy, unfortunately, Foreign Office.
Well, earlier you spoke of the European Union. Necmettin Erbakan once, he considered the European Union as a Christian club, although, I mean, the party revised its approach vis-a-vis the EU late 1990s. But I'm curious about your take on that. What's your view on the EU and Turkey's membership of the EU?
Well, Turkey can become a member of European Union. But let me make it very clear. European Union is a Christian club. Because, I mean, at the beginning, there were very few members of the European Union. Later on, those countries who were separated from Russia, they gained their freedom from Russia, the Romania, Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Czech Republic, now they have Czechoslovakia, it used to be different, Hungary, Poland, all of them have been accepted as the member of European Union. But Turkey, only one chapter was accepted for the last now 18 years nearly, or 15 years. The conditions in Turkey, if Turkey was a full member of the European Union, would not have gone as bad as it is now. It could be. But let me tell you, when some of the European countries, the representatives, ambassadors have invited me about 2 years ago to a dinner to talk about these issues. Now, what I told them, I will now tell exactly my ideas here as well. I said that unfortunately, Western countries for centuries fought among themselves continuously. 100 years passed between the wars between the European countries. The two world war was started between Germany and Britain, France. The first and the second as well. You could not solve your problems peacefully But after the Second World War, everybody understood that if a third world war started, everyone will resort to mass destruction weapons, atomic weapons. So they said that there should not be any war among ourselves. So let us take precautions. First, they made an agreement in Geneva. Yes, it was in Geneva, about the conduct of war. Every country should follow certain rules. They should not oppress the captives. They should feed them. They should treat them as human beings. Secondly, they said, well, in fact, in the world, there is what is called now a human right. We should abide by the human right. Let us establish a court in France, in Strasbourg. Third, they said, well, we do sometimes disregard the certain rules among ourselves. Let us establish a court of justice in La Haye, Den Haag. And there was peace in Europe, but after 70 years, people who are ruling their countries forgot the wars. Now, there are problems now arising among themselves again, which could lead to war. I mean, Britain, without quarrel, said that, well, I am leaving the European Union. They just went away. Now there are problems of how they will adapt to the new atmosphere. But these rules, which I just mentioned earlier, was incumbent in our own belief. Human rights, you cannot disregard human rights. Justice, you cannot disregard justice among the countries as well. There are 4 points we emphasize. One of them, unfortunately, Western countries, they cannot leave the colonization understanding of the poor countries. They say, this is our right. We can go occupy Africa, America, or Asia, and we can exploit the natural resources for our own. Because for the last 300 years, Africa did not develop because they were, unfortunately, made use of the stronger countries, and they have double standard. I mean, in America, this is obvious.
So you are, sorry to interrupt.
Basic rules. Why I am mentioning this, these are, if we want peace in the world, we should abide by these rules. There should not be any kind of, I mean, we should talk about democracy, freedom, and then we should support a dictator. I mean, how can this happen?
So we're running out of time. So to recap what you just said, so you're saying that EU is overrated. They haven't lived up to their own standards. So let's just break it off. Turkey is better served, not being part.
No, in that respect, we have what we said, especially Erdogan said, we can be a part of European Union, but we have our relationship with some of the Muslim countries. We have certain establishments. We have D8, for example, countries. We have certain agreements how we should deal. Just like Britain and France, they did not want to break their relationship with their countries which they occupied in Africa. Well, we said that we have not occupied, but we have relationship. Let us continue our relationship with those countries as well. This was the only point that Erdogan put forward.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask about that. He promoted this idea of an Islamic Union, a union of Muslim countries, a union led by Turkey. That was the idea. But given the divergences among Muslim countries today and the skepticism in the Arab world vis-a-vis Turkey, do you think it's realistic under the current circumstances? I mean, if you were the president, what would you do to realize that Islamic Union under Turkish leadership?
Well, Turkish leadership, it is not just a Turkish leadership. I think countries who have relationship, historical relationship, it is natural for them to come together and try to solve their problems. This is a natural approach. I mean, not just coming together who have a base in past history. I mean, Britain has not forgotten their dominion. Still, Canada, Queen is the Queen of Britain, the Queen of Canada as well. Well, it may be symbolic, but still, in Australia, Queen is the Queen of Australia. And other, South Africa, they broke away and then they came in afterwards. India, other countries, they carry on with their historic ties. They don't want to break with it. Well, we do not want to break with the countries we had historic relationship. Turkey, because of the past history, it has the priority, it seems to be, but I do not think that Turkey should be the only country. We should come together. We should establish the basis of what we have been talking about. Democracy, you can say, rule of law, you can say, freedom of belief, understanding, you can say, the transparency of the state, you can say, whatever. But we should apply these principles in our own countries. But we should develop our economic relationships as well, which is natural. We should be able to come together if there are any international problems to solve, to approach the issue from a mutual point of view. This is what we are trying to do. Believe me, in the West, there is a misunderstanding of Islamic understanding and Islamic attitude. Basically, all the problems arise from that misunderstanding.
The way you describe Turkey's role in the region sounded very much like Ahmet Davutoğlu. So I have a question about that. He had a very particular view of the Arab uprisings. He saw them as the end of illegitimate regimes that would give rise to the Islamists. So what's your view of the Arab uprisings? Did you see them as an Islamic awakening?
Well, I don't know the context of Davutoğlu, what he in general said, but it was understood as an awakening. Unfortunately, later on, everybody saw that, in fact, this was not an awakening. It was imposed by certain countries to cause problem in these countries. Apart from Tunisia, there is chaos in all the Muslim countries who tried this. Egypt, Syria, or some of the other countries. I mean, even Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a big problem. They have not been able to solve. They do not want to solve. The biggest, the most important issue is that, especially, unfortunately, you are in the United States. United States do not want to solve the problems that exist. The problems, if they continue, they will always need the Western countries, especially the United States. This policy causes chaos in the world, causes.
So you differ then, you differ in your assessment of the Arab uprisings from Davutoğlu. So I made a mistake then, because he thought that the uprisings were just a natural the course of history dictated that people at some point rise up to their oppressors, and he thought that that was what was happening. But you're saying that no, it wasn't just it wasn't that, it was imposed by Western countries on
instigated, not imposed, but instigated by the unfortunately foreign countries. Because afterwards, what happened in Egypt? I mean, whether the Ikhwan was successful or not, that is a different point. But a legitimate government which came to power by the vote of the demand of the public was disposed by the army. And the United States was behind that army. I mean, how can be compatible with democracy, understanding, or rule of law?
That's
this
right.
Is double standard.
So do you think the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt made mistakes?
Well, most probably. Basically, I have not studied what happened. But especially democracies are very fragile in this type of countries. Only, as I said, in Tunisia, they are trying to accommodate democracy with their understanding of governance. And it seems at present they have been successful. Ghannouchi did not insist being the president, being the ruler. He said, no, let's talk, let's come to agreement, discuss the problems together, then we'll solve. This is the right approach. And in Morocco, I mean, there is a kingdom, but still there is a democratic understanding. In Morocco as well, the rulers, now the government is established basically by a party which cherishes the Islamic ideas, Islamic values. And there has been no problem. Ikhwan, whether they made any problem in Egypt, they may have done. But in Muslim countries or the developing countries, the basic problem is the attitude of the people who come to power. They do not grasp what is happening, and they want to impose what they understand. And that is wrong. It will not solve the problem at all, and it has not done so.
What was your take on Turkey supported Muslim Brotherhood link groups in the region? Did you support that?
Well, I mean, Muslim Brotherhood is composed there of very different type of people. They have very different ideals when it comes to the basic, to values. They were very novice in governance. That is why they made certain mistakes. Even now, they are making certain mistakes in other parts of the world as well. I mean, in Syria. Now, there is a chaos, bloodshed in Syria. They made the mistake. And the Turkish government made the mistake of supporting them.
What was the mistake that they made?
Uprising. I mean, once you decide to uprise by a military uprising against the rulers of the country, there will be chaos. Uprising will not solve the problem. There will be bloodshed, and the bloodshed will make the conditions worse than it was. Just like in Syria, we can see this, obviously. In Egypt, Turkish government could have been, should not have broken all the relationship with Egypt, I think. Because
with
Sisi, with the Sisi government, I mean, I will not support him. I do not think that he is really the needed ruler of Egypt. He is oppressing Egypt today. But government to government, if there is a relationship, then you can soften their attitude, their approach to the problems. This is what we need. In the Islamic world, generally, the Muslim countries and Muslim politicians, thinkers, academicians should dedicate themselves to the understanding of behavior, approach to the problems of the country. If not, because we help really to increase the chaos in the countries.
One final question. You said that in a recent interview, Turkey should not pursue a policy that's dependent on the United States. What do you mean by that?
Well, United States, especially lately, made a lot of mistakes. Today, I mean, Trump, even in his own country, he is saying now that if he loses, most probably he will not accept the results because there will be some interference in the election. I mean, with such a mind, it is impossible to come together and understand his ideas of governance. But as a whole, United States have supported Israel in such a way that Israel was free, had a free hand to oppress the Palestinians. This is the biggest mistake. I mean, when the state of Israel was established in 1948, the conditions where the Arabs were staying, how the country was occupied by the inhabitants, Arab and Israeli. And look at the map now. They are by force evicting the, unfortunately, Palestinians, and they are without any land. They are saying that, well, you have a state. This is wrong, and the United States is supporting. I mean, why the capital of Israel was accepted by the United States as the capital of Israel?
But do you think US's unconditional support for Israel is the most important problem in Turkey-US relations?
No, not just that. I mean, for example, for example, but that is the basic policy in the Middle East of the United States depends and is based in the basic policy is to support the Israeli aggression. And there is, as you know, a Greater Middle East project. The maps were published in Pentagon magazine, and they said that, well, that map was just the idea of a colonel. No. How can you publish such a map there? And Turkey is divided according to that map. Will be separated. Certain parts of Turkey will be broken away from Turkey. Syria, Iran, Iraq, even Pakistan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, they are all become divided, and many small states will be established so that they will be controlled easily in the Middle East. How can I agree with such a policy? This is Greater Middle East policy is the policy of the United States. And Erdogan accepted this and became, in fact, co-chairman of that understanding policy.
If you were to become president tomorrow, would you do anything to fix the problems in Turkey-US ties, or you don't see any value in Turkey's membership in NATO, Turkey-US ties? What would you do?
No, the basic thing is, as I said, the basic values are the basic values. Everybody should abide by it. In the world today, Israel is the only country which will not abide by any international rule. Disregards it. Why should I hug them if they disregard the international rule? They disregard the United Nations. They disregard all the agreements that are accepted by other countries. Because they are the only, there is Vatican and then there is Israel. Vatican is the state of the Catholics, and Israel is the state of Jewish religion. No one talks about this. Why? It is forbidden. Because, I mean, when it comes to Muslims, why you will come and you will apply Sharia? Well, they are applying the Jewish Sharia in Israel. And they are massacring the people. They are treating them inhumanely. Even 14, 12 years old children are executed, oppressed by the Israeli government. And within Israel, there is a very big Jewish community which do not agree with the government. They oppose. They put forward a resistance in favor of the Palestinian community.
And you think Erdogan is not doing enough to support the Palestinian cause? Because he's been saying the same things as you are right now. So President Erdogan, do you think he hasn't done enough to support?
No, unfortunately, no. He has seemingly he makes certain statements against the Israeli government, but in principle, unfortunately, he has supported their present condition.
Sorry, I know I said last question, but there's another question from the audience, which is about the recent conflict that's been reignited between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And Turkey said that it stands firmly behind the Azeris. So just very briefly, if you could, what's your take on that?
Our point of view, Azerbaijan is right in this respect, because Armenia have really attacked directly the soil of the Azerbaijan. And Turkey has no other choice than supporting Azerbaijan in that respect. You support them.
Well, Mr. Karamollaoglu, this has been a fascinating discussion, and many thanks for taking the time to talk to us today. Hope to host you again soon, and thanks to those who followed the discussion. Thank you.
Well, I thank you very much. If you come to Turkey, please visit us.
I will.
I hope you will. Definitely.
I hope I will, but thank you so much for the invitation, and again, thank you for joining us today.
Well, I thank you, all of you who are listening to me. I hope I have made it myself clear, because as I said, when you do not use the language continuously, sometimes you falter. I hope
you have expressed yourself very well, sir. Thank you. It's been a great discussion. Thank you.
Well, I thank you very much, Gonul Hanım. Thank you.
Bye.